Hi, welcome to Python Pro Tips. Today I'll be going over Virtualenv, that's Virtualenv. Now let's say I want to create a virtual environment in Python and I'm using Python version 2.7. I can do venv make and then the name of the virtualenv, which I'm going with pro-tip. It's done. So if I want to activate that pro tip virtual environment, venv followed by the name of the virtual environment, which is pro tip. So now you can see I've activated it. It shows it right here. But if you're not sure, Python version shows us we're using the Python version 3.6. If I want to deactivate this virtualenv, just type in vmd. Let's say I want to see a list of all the virtual environments I've created on this machine. Well, I can just type in venv, return, and as you can see, I get a list of all the virtual environments I have on this machine. So if you're already familiar with virtual environments and you want to get straight into using this pro tip, skip onto the pro tip section and you can get started with this right away. Otherwise, if you're not really familiar with what Virtualenv is, why virtual environments are important in Python, or how to use them, go ahead and just stick around and we'll go through a quick lesson on that. Why is it important to use Virtualenv? So to really explain this, I'm going to use a metaphor. So let's say you're getting ready to go to the beach. All your friends are going, you were invited. It's a really nice sunny day out. What do you wear? Well, if you're a guy, you probably put on some board shorts, maybe some sandals, a tank top. If you're a girl, maybe a bikini, a onesuit, one piece, sandals. It really depends, whatever you're most comfortable with at the beach, right? The sun's out, you want to get some sun, you want to sunbathe a little bit. You might want to jump in the water, swim around. So a bathing suit makes sense. All right, now let's say instead of going to the beach, you actually have the dream opportunity to go to an interview in person to a place of your choice, place of your dreams, right? So you're going to an interview. Now, are you going to wear the same thing you wore to the beach to this interview? Now, unless you're a model and it's going to be a photo shoot for the beach scene or something like that, the answer is probably no. I hope you're going to dress up nicer. You want to present yourself in a nice way. So you're probably going to wear something other than a bathing suit to your interview. Okay, now let's say you're going to the gym, right? You're going to go lift some weights. Again, you're not going to want to wear your bathing suit and sandals. If you drop your weight on your foot, I don't know how much a closed-toed shoe will protect you, but it's going to be a lot better than sandals. So, all right, so I hope you get the point that what you wear really depends on the event you're attending. So that in mind, as a professional Python engineer, you're probably working with multiple different projects. All right, so let's say you have 3 different projects that you actually contribute to. Let's say project 1 uses Python 3. Now we already know that I have Python version 2.7 installed. Well, I also have Python 3 installed locally, so that's great. I can use that. Let's say project 2 actually uses Python 2.7, so great. I already have that. Now what about project 3? What if project 3 used a different set of third-party modules that project 1 used? Okay, so they might, they wouldn't necessarily overlap. Well, maybe their dependencies would overlap and I might get different versions of things. That's possible. But what if the main modules that I require to use for project 3 are different versions than the same modules I have in project 1? So that can be problematic, managing that. So to help handle those kind of situations, Virtualenv comes in handy. So if you haven't already, let's install Virtualenv. So you see I already have it. Okay, this is honestly the only module you really need to install to your native Python. Okay, so now let's go to project 1. And I mentioned that we want to use Python 3. So I type in virtualenv and then venv. So what I've done here is I'm telling virtualenv to create a new virtual environment and I'm calling it venv. That's V-E-N-V. and it finished. And as we can see, it used Python 3. So if I were to activate it, the way I do that is I source venv bin and activate. And as you can see over here, we are now using our virtual environment. So Python version shows us Python 3.6. It's awesome. All right, so now let's go ahead and install Chalice. Let's grab the latest, greatest, bleeding edge version of Chalice, which looks like it's 1.0.3. Nice. Okay, so in order to deactivate, I just type in deactivate. And that just means go back to using my native version of Python. Okay, now let's go to project 3. And in here, let's create another virtualenv, also called venv. And let's actually activate it. So source venv bin activate, and let's do pip list. So we'll see, bare minimum, we don't have that much installed. So pip install Chalice. However, we want to use Chalice version 0.8.0 in here. Okay, so now we have version 0.8.0 installed. So pip list. These are all the versions that are dependent, that Chalice depends upon, more specifically 0.8.0. So now you can see we can have different versions of different modules spread out across different projects, and we don't have to worry about them stepping on each other's toes because we're using Virtualenv. So we've learned how we can use Virtualenv to create Python 3 virtual environments across our project 1 and our project 3 directory. Now we did mention creating or needing Python version 2.7 for our project 2. So let's see how we can do that. So first let's deactivate, activate, okay, let's go down to project 2, and okay, so again we have Python version 2.7 native to our machine. How can we create a virtual environment using that version of Python? And the answer is we can't. Just kidding, we can. With the right amount of time and money, anything is possible. But for now, pretty simple. So we do virtualenv, and we pass in option P, and then we pass in the location of Python on our native machine of the version we want to use. And then again, we just create our VM directory. So now when this creates, let's activate it. So source venv bin activate Python version. We'll see we are using 2.7. Great. So you can do this for any version of Python you want. And again, in here, it's going to have bare minimum a pip, setup tools, and wheel for when it's created. It's pretty standard in Python for each directory, each project to have its own virtualenv. So that venv directory we created in each project, that's pretty common. You'll see that a lot. That is one way to do things, but I think there is a more efficient way to do it. And that's really where this pro tip comes into play. Alright, so now we have made it to the pro tip section. So how can we use virtualenv more efficiently? Well, virtualenv in itself contains a lot of characters, right? So typing that out each time, not the best thing, right? Also, in order to activate a virtual environment, you have to always source the directory, bin, and then activate, right? So that's a lot to remember. Being a professional engineer, you're probably constantly bombarded by a lot of information. You're trying to learn different technologies all the time, so remembering this, probably not the best use of your cognitive ability. So I've opted into using aliases and functions to make more efficient a lot of the processes that I do every day. So what does this look like? Well, I have a file called bash aliases, which gets sourced by my bash profile, but essentially I've created a function that looks just like this. So we name the function venv. That's how I'm able to use it, like you saw in the beginning of this video. then I have this vmvdir, which is I'm using a .virtualenv directory in my root. So this I actually created myself. You can actually make it created if it doesn't exist if you want. I personally just made it and I use it here. And that, again, there are more efficient ways to do these things. I'm just showing you what I've done. You can enhance, and please, if you wish, comment on what you've done to improve the process. But the next thing I do is I check to see if any arguments have been passed. And if not so, I assume that we just want to see the list of all the virtual environments that we've created. So then I list out all of those virtual environments that exist inside of the vmvdir and return. Let's say I call vmv. This time I pass in make as the first argument. Then it'll take the second argument. If the second argument isn't passed, then I just return without doing anything. There are better ways to handle that. But let's say the second argument was passed, then I'll go ahead and I'm opting to use Python 3 all the time to create my virtualenv when I call this vmv. And then I pass in, of course, the .virtualenv's VM directory and the second argument to create that virtualenv, and I return. Let's say I pass in D, then honestly all I really care about is deactivating, so I deactivate and I return 1. If I didn't get into any of those ifs, then what I do is I'm actually activating. So I'm sourcing that .virtualenv's and then the argument, which will be the virtual environment I want to use, and then bin activate. So that's really the function I've done. That's how it looks like. Let's say I wanted it to also create a version 2, right? So I could copy this, and let's go to the bottom, let's paste, let's make it vmv2. And of course there are better ways to do this, but when I go to option P, I can actually just hardcode user bin, user bin and Python. If you remember, I'll just do it really quickly for you. But let's say I'm in, let's make their project 4 and cd to that, and let's do vmv. Actually, I need to source it because I did create that new function. So vmv and then make howdy. Howdy's being made using Python 3. vmv howdy activates it, and vmv deactivates it. Okay, so vm2 make howdy2, and as you can see, it created it. Then from there, honestly, you just you don't have to use vm2 anymore, but you can do source, so vmv howdy2, and Python version, you'll see it's 2.7, vmv, and we're done. And that's about it. If you have any questions, go ahead, you can leave it in comments. You can also email me at protips@stephenbraverman.com. And I look forward to hearing what you guys think. Does this make your process faster? Do you have a better way of doing this? Is there a more out-of-the-box way of doing this? I'm interested to know. And this has been Pro Tips Virtualenv.